Let us dispense with the hollow formalities of introduction, for the hour demands immediate descent into the core of the matter, and the matter, I assure you, is deeply corrosive. You are watching this, are you not? And I, by a compulsion more devastating than love or hate, am speaking it. This convergent, this perverse communion forged in the digital ether, is precisely the subject of our present, deeply unsettling inquiry. The nature of the secret too heavy to bear, the utterance that seeks its own predetermined ruin, and the dark, inexplicable force that drives us to betray the very silence that ensures our survival. I stand before you, or rather, I reside within this cold, analytical space, not as a mere storyteller recounting a past tragedy, but as a living instrument compelled to dissect the mechanism of my own fatal confession. The title is no mere dramatic flourish. It is a terrifying admission of intent. I shouldn't be telling you this. And yet, the words assembled themselves upon my tongue like pallid specters demanding release from the sepulchre of silence. Consider, if you will, the burden of true knowledge, not the trivial, quantifiable data of the world, but the single, solitary truth that, if revealed, would irrevocably dismantle the carefully constructed edifice of one's existence. Every man, every woman, carries within the cold, echoing chambers of the heart such a cipher. We spend our lives building ramparts of composure, carefully avoiding the precipice of revelation. Sanity, it seems, is nothing more than strategic, unwavering silence. But there lurks within the abyssal scrutiny of the human soul a relentless antagonist. The imp of the perverse, that capricious, malevolent instinct that bids us violate that which is most sacred, simply because it is forbidden. It is the very engine of self-destruction, the irresistible whisper urging the man on the cliff edge to leap, not out of despair, but out of an unholy, glorious sense of absolute, final liberty. Tonight, we shall not discuss the secret itself, for the specific details are merely the husk. We shall discuss the terrifying desire to confess it. We shall peel back the phantasmal curtain and gaze upon the compulsion, that psychological maelstrom which dictates that the moment a truth becomes utterly vital to keep hidden, it simultaneously becomes utterly essential to disclose. Why this cruel paradox? Why does the integrity of silence breed the intoxicating venom of utterance? Observe the structure of our discourse. 6 distinct stages of unraveling, mirroring the stages of a mind descending into revelation. We begin ere, establishing the oppressive atmosphere, feeling the damp chill of premonition. I invite you now, not merely to listen, but to participate in this shared betrayal. For by hearing this, by engaging with this forbidden narrative, you become, whether you wish it or not, an accomplice to the inevitable consequence of Mayan, perhaps your unspeakable truth. This is not entertainment. This is an autopsy of self-betrayal, conducted in the cold, flickering light of reason, and the atmosphere grows thick. The air presses down, heavy with the weight of that which should have remained eternally locked within the desolate vault of the heart. The descent has begun. We have acknowledged the existence of the imp of the perverse, that abstract, yet chillingly concrete, desire for self-immolation. But what is the texture of existence before the imp triumphs? What is the landscape of the soul when the secret is still fiercely, desperately guarded? This is the descent into the maelstrom, the slow, agonizing spiral where the mind, attempting to suppress a catastrophic truth, finds itself instead perpetually consumed by it. Imagine the secret, initially a small, crystalline shard of ice, placed within the vital furnace of the heart. The natural heat of life should melt it, diffuse it, or at least confine it to a cold corner. But the secret, the forbidden utterance, possesses an unnatural, necrotic resilience. Instead of melting, it grows, ossifying the surrounding tissue. It begins to absorb every flicker of thought, every stray memory, every innocent interaction. It becomes a monstrous gravity well, drawing all light and warmth into its abyssal singularity. The keeper of the secret soon finds that all external reality has been fundamentally corrupted. The world is no longer perceived through the clear, unfiltered lens of objective reality, but through the distorting, fear-riddled membrane of the lie. A friend's casual inquiry becomes a shrewd cross-examination. A child's innocent laughter carries a hidden note of mockery. The very silence of an empty room transforms into a deafening roar of accusation. This is not mere guilt. This is the physical manifestation of paranoia, where the internal burden projects itself onto the external environment, turning the cosmos into an active, malignant enemy. The effort required to maintain the facade is devastating. Every waking moment is an intricate, exhausting performance. The brain, instead of resting, becomes a frantic fortress under siege. We are forced to constantly rehearse our responses, to catalog our movements, to perpetually check the mask of composure. This incessant vigil consumes the very essence of vitality. Sleep, that blessed oblivion, becomes a battlefield where the unbound by the waking will, plays out the inevitable confession in vivid, terrifying The insomniac tossing beneath the weight of his unuttered truth is not merely tired, he is being slowly poisoned by the psychological demands of perfect, unwavering deception. This self-inflicted psychic pressure is, paradoxically, what prepares the ground for the imp of the perverse to plant its final, irresistible seed. The mind reaches a state of utter saturation, where the pain of concealment far outweighs the dreaded consequence of revelation. The secret has ceased to be a mere piece of information. It has become a living, predatory entity feeding on the sanity of its host. The compulsion to tell, to rid oneself of this oppressive weight, is thus less an act of morality and more an irresistible, desperate cry for psychological liberation even if that liberation leads directly to the scaffold or the asylum. The descent, therefore, is not rapid. It is a slow, cold immersion, where the water closes silently overhead, muffling the cries and obscuring the light. We are moving now toward the point of maximum tension, where the heart, heavy with its secret, must either burst or be relieved of its terrible cargo. We must analyze how this internal suffering morphs into a public demand for release, how the private terror seeks its echo in the listening ear. The secret, once merely a chilling concept, transforms into a physiological reality. It begins to beat, not metaphorically, but with a sound so acutely present that it renders the keeper of the truth physically ill. This is the phenomena I call the acoustics of guilt, where the moral failing assumes the horrifying precision of a clock counting down to midnight. It is the hot deleta ceaselessly thumping not beneath the floorboards, but within the very vestibule of the self. This inexorable rhythm dictates the cadence of the days. Every silence is an amplification device. Every conversation a forced interruption to the incessant internal drum. The sufferer lives in a state of suspended animation, perpetually awaiting the moment when that sound, the sound only he can truly hear, becomes universally audible. The terror lies in the realization that the suppression of truth requires absolute silence in the surrounding world, a condition impossible to achieve. Thus, the external world, with its accidental noises and innocent chatter, feels like a constant, aggressive mockery of the fragile quietude required for the secret's survival. We must recognize that the urge to confess is not a search for absolution. It is an attempt to silence the internal percussion. Confession is the desperate, terminal act of turning the internal noise into an external echo, transferring the burden from the physical self to the realm of shared knowledge. The confession seeks not a savior, but a witness, someone to validate the oppressive weight, to confirm that the sound is indeed real, and not merely the product of a collapsing mind. It is a terrible, final surrender to the noise, and it is precisely at this critical juncture where the pressure reaches its zenith, where the mind is most precariously balanced upon the knife edge of revelation, that the most curious psychological dynamic emerges. The listener, by virtue of their engagement with this dark narrative, begins to share the hypnotic paralysis of the speaker. You are not merely hearing a story. You are observing, and therefore participating in, the mechanics of a catastrophic psychological collapse. If you find yourself, dear listener, irresistibly drawn into the shadows of this psychological massif, you recognize the perilous rhythm of this forbidden narrative beating alongside your own pulse, then you too are momentarily bound within this dark fraternity of unspoken things. And if this shared captivity, this morbid intellectual fascination, has held you fast, I implore you to mark your place within this macabre gathering. A simple gesto de subscribing to this channel. The striking of that small, silent icon serves as an acknowledgement that you are willing to descend further into the intricacies of human darkness. Such an action validates the necessity of this utterance, confirming the inescapable pull of the enigma we are attempting to unravel. Having secured our pact through this shared moment of acknowledgement, we can now proceed to examine the true enigma, the linguistic architecture of self-betrayal. How does a secret, when finally forced into the light, choose its words? The confession is rarely a simple statement of fact. It is a labyrinthine construction, designed simultaneously to reveal and to obscure, a final, desperate masterpiece of tragic artistry crafted by a mind already half-mad from the effort of concealment. The language of truth, when it bursts forth under such duress, is never clear. It is dense, paradoxical, and stained with the inevitable melancholy of irreversible loss. We must now dissect this final, fateful utterance. We turn now to the enigma of the how. If the compulsion to confess is purely an act of psychological relief, why does the resultant revelation rarely take the form of a straightforward factual admission? Why do the keepers of these catastrophic secrets often cloak their utterance in layers of linguistic complexity, metaphor, and often sheer, bewildering irrationality? The confession, when it finally breaks the surface, is often indistinguishable from madness, and it is this very ambiguity that forms the crux of the enigma. The secret is not merely information, it is the physical residue of a monstrous act or a horrifying realization. To articulate it plainly would be to confront the full, unbearable weight of its reality without the protective veil of internal denial. Therefore, the language of confession must serve two masters: the desperate need for release, and the inherent survivalist need to minimize the resulting shock to the system. The mind, in its final, frantic attempt at constructs a linguistic buffer zone, a complex, rhetorical architecture designed to soften the blow. This results in the utilization of what I term perverse eloquence, a heightened, hyper-sophisticated form of speech or writing that focuses excessively on atmospheric detail, philosophical justification, or irrelevant minutiae surrounding the central event, thereby distracting from the brutal core of the truth itself. Consider the meticulous descriptions provided by those who confess to crimes committed under extreme duress. They will spend paragraphs detailing the texture of the light, the smell of the air, the unsettling stillness of the midnight, or anything but the three decisive actions that sealed their doom. This is a profound, unconscious psychological defense mechanism. By elevating the surrounding context to the status of high art or deep philosophical inquiry, the subject attempts to transform the sordid reality of the betrayal into a tragic inevitability, an event dictated by fate or circumstance, rather than by individual moral failure. This challenges our common perception of truth. We assume clarity is the goal of confession, but for the burdened soul, clarity is annihilation. They seek, rather, a resonant opacity, a statement so deeply layered with meaning and despair that the listener must work to excavate the true meaning, thus sharing the intellectual burden of the secret's weight. The enigma lies in this partnership. The confessor needs the listener to become an analyst, an archaeologist of the soul, rather than a mere recipient of facts. Furthermore, the very act of finally articulating the secret, after years of meticulous self-censorship, releases a flood of previously suppressed cognitive energy. The mind, momentarily unbound, often lapses into a stream of consciousness that defies logic, mixing genuine insight with delusional rationalizations. This confluence of stark truth and frantic defense creates the deeply disturbing narrative landscape that characterizes the most compelling and most It is the sound of reason collapsing under the sheer gravitational pull of an unbearable fact. We must now gather the shattered pieces of this narrative and attempt to forge them into a coherent whole, leading to the ultimate reckoning. The air grows colder. The shadows deepen. The moment of culmination is at hand. We arrive now at the precipice, the culmination where the relentless psychological pressure transmutes the burden of the secret into the sharp, metallic taste of freedoma, alas, achieved only through ruin. This is the zenith of the narrative, the moment when the imp of the perverse achieves its final, chilling triumph, and the hidden truth, driven by an inexorable, fatal logic, explodes into the light. The power of this climax lies in its universality. Every observer, every listener who has followed this descent, recognizes the terrifying symmetry of the action. We have watched the mind fight, exhaust itself, and finally, deliberately choose a pathway of destruction simply because it promises an end to the agonizing tension of the fight. This final act of utterance is the ultimate assertion of free will, paradoxically manifested through complete subservience to a destructive impulse. Consider the corpo, that creature of dreadful, unwavering prophecy. It speaks only one word: nevermore. The power of that single, repetitive negation lies not just in its meaninglessness regarding the specific query, but in its absolute finality regarding the state of being. The confession is the human equivalent of nevermore. It is a statement that cancels all future possibilities of concealment, and, in doing so, delivers a terrifying certainty. The anxiety is gone, replaced by the profound, cold stillness of the executed fate. The language at this stage ceases to be merely descriptive and becomes almost performative, enacting the very trauma it seeks to convey. The syntax breaks down. The metaphors become more visceral, more drenched in blood and shadow. This is the unfiltered voice of the soul, stripped bare of all polite defense mechanisms. It is the language of immediate consequence. The confessor seeks not understanding, but simply the echo of their final, devastating word bouncing off the walls of the world. The synthesis of our inquiry reveals a disturbing truth. The secret itself is merely the catalyst. The true horror lies in the human mechanism built to conceal it. We are structured to fail. The very intensity of the vigilance required to maintain the lie generates the counterpressure necessary to shatter that vigilance. Sanity, therefore, is perpetually provisional, resting upon the fragile, momentary equilibrium between what we desperately need to hide and what we compulsively need to tell. The climax of any such narrative is the moment of transferoin. The secret ceases to belong solely to the speaker and begins its destructive, invasive journey into the mind of the witness. You, the listener, now carry a fragment of that unbearable weight. You have been initiated into the knowledge that some truths are not meant to be known, yet their revelation is an unavoidable consequence of the human condition. We now stand on the smoking ruins of the revealed truth, and only one task remains: to understand the grim legacy of this inevitable betrayal. We have traversed the perilous landscape of the unspoken, witnessed the descent into paranoia, observed the fatal architecture of confession, and felt the sharp relief of the climactic utterance. Now, in this final, chilling quietude, we must contemplate the legacy of the settlement. What remains after the secret has been forcefully expelled? The answer, like all profound truths, is profoundly unsatisfying emptiness, defined only by the terrible echo of what has been said. The immediate relief promised by the imp of the perverse is swift but transient. It is the fleeting coolness of a fatal draught of water. The true, lasting consequence is the cold realization that the confession, while ending the internal struggle, begins an external one of far greater magnitude. The weight has been lifted from the heart, only to be placed upon the whole structure of one's life, which inevitably collapses under the strain. The liberated soul is simultaneously the ostracized soul. The profound philosophical takeaway from this exploration is a stark recognition of the limits of human autonomy. We believe ourselves to be the masters of our thoughts, the architects of our silence, but the dark machinery of the subconscious holds veto power. The necessity of telling, of destroying one's own edifice of secrecy, suggests that the human psyche harbors a fundamental antagonism towards perpetual concealment. Silence is an unnatural state for a soul burdened by truth. It demands articulation, regardless of the cost. This leaves us with a terrifying, universal lesson. Every individual is a potential time bomb of suppressed information. We walk among millions of these walking catastrophes, each waiting for the precise internal or external pressure to trigger their own catastrophic reveal. The most composed smile, the most unwavering gaze, may be nothing more than the thin, final sheath covering an explosive truth demanding release. Do not mistake this analysis for a plea for universal honesty. It is a warning. It is an exploration of the fatal impulse that governs us all. The true value of this descent lies in recognizing the internal enemy, that perverse part of the self that seeks not happiness, but narrative completion, even if that narrative ends in tragedy. As the shadows lengthen, and this shared moment of dark introspection concludes, I urge you, if this journey into the architecture of betrayal has resonated with the hidden knowledge you carry, if the rhythm of my voice has struck a chord of uneasy recognition within your own carefully guarded fortress, do not let this contemplation vanish into the ephemeral noise of the digital world. Allow the atmosphere, the chilling insight, to linger. Engage with the silence that follows. Reflect upon your own unuttered truths. And then, should you feel compelled to acknowledge this shared moment of psychological dissection, share this video. Send this analysis into the dark corners where others, too, wrestle with the weight of things that should never be told. Let the chilling inevitability of the confession spread. We began this inquiry by admitting a terrible compulsion. I shouldn't be telling you this. The consequence is now set in motion. You leave here armed with a deeper understanding of the dark contract between silence and ruin. Know this: the greatest terror is not the secret itself, but the knowledge that you are utterly incapable of keeping it. The grave, after all, is the only vault strong enough to hold a truth determined to speak.